let me thank Okwe and the Cinemax business for inviting me to do this. I also have to explain how I came to get to know Okwe and work with Okwe. And the reason why is Bisola Ayeola and her co-conspirators who asked us to look at a film project, which we got involved with. And I'd like to say something very, very simple. Every time that money people do business with you and the money comes back, all you have done is you have built a runway for life. So every time, madam, that you, Okpe, you turn up and you show us something, you can be rest assured that we will do our best to make it happen. And that's an incredible demonstration. We put money into this project, Tosin when? In April, May. And I'm delighted to say to you that we've gotten the money back. And if ever there was a good advertisement for doing business with Nigeria's creative industry, it's stories like that. Let me start by thanking each and every one of you, because what you do is really, really important for the future of this country, and even more so for the future of this continent. Whether we like it or not, if people don't already realize it, the world is becoming increasingly African. And at the center of that story is Nigeria. We will all wake up in less than 20 years' time, and there will be a scenario where about a third of the world's population will come from this continent. And roughly 25% of those people will be Nigerian. They need to be fed, they need to be clothed, they need to be entertained, they need to be banked. This is the opportunity set. There will be 500 million people here. And the reason there'll be 500 million people in this country is because we haven't started doing anything about population control. And from the time you start to do that, it will take about 30 years to reduce your population growth rates. So whether we like it or not, our population, which at the end of last year was 216 million people, will hit 500 million people in your lifetimes. And when that happens, somebody needs to provide them with entertainment. But there's a second reason why what you do is really, really important. It's important because you tell our stories, and it's important to tell our stories because people like myself spend our lifetime trying to convince people to invest here. And they do not invest here primarily because they do not know enough. It's really, really important that you tell those stories, because when people understand much more about us, when people know that we're a people with history, we're a people with culture, we're a people with art, we're a people with a lot of education and enlightenment, they will become much more comfortable around us. And if you're not comfortable around people, you will never, ever invest. What are the simple things in my mind from a period of interacting with the industry? And I've probably invested in Nigeria's entertainment industry for more than 25 years. But it's only very, very recently that we started to get some money back. I invested in the first studio that I invested in here, which is something called Solar Productions. And many of you might not even know what Solar Productions is. But it was built by Boyega Adelaja and Remy, Ogunpiton more than 29 years ago, and I was their first external investor. And I've invested in a variety of things around the sector, from infrastructure to film to content, a variety of things. But very often, most of my co-conspirators or partners have never understood that this was business, this was big business. I think the whole sector today now recognizes the opportunity set around what you do. And my belief is that over the next 20 to 30 years, this sector, if people recognize and harness the opportunity well, can become not only one of the biggest creators of jobs in our country, but it can become 20 to 25% of Nigeria's GDP. Now, what does that mean? Nigeria's GDP in 20 to 30 years will be more than $1 trillion. So this sector that you think of today, and I think it will get to $1 trillion much quicker than 20 to 25 years. This sector today, therefore, can be a minimum of $250 billion of value. And all of that value can be harnessed by Nigerians if we do, and Africans, if we do the right things. What are we going to have to do? And message one for me will be greater collaboration and partnership. If we do not work together, collaborate, and partner more, the sum of 1 plus 1 will never, ever be greater than 2. In fact, it will always end up being less than 2. And for my sins, I support the world's greatest football club. It's called Liverpool Football Club. And there must be many Arsenal and Man U supporters there. Or Man City supporters. And you know them and how long they've been watching football by who they support. If they've been watching football for 40 plus years, they're Liverpool supporters. If they've been watching football for about 15, 20 years, they're Arsenal supporters. They started watching football about 7 to 10 years ago. They support Man City. Why do I talk about football? Because it's also another important part of this creative economy. But the Liverpool reference was because Liverpool's motto is "You'll never walk alone." And partnership is so fundamental to what we do, because none of us can do it alone. None of us has the talent or the bandwidth or even the health to do it alone. None of us can do it alone because none of us has the capital or even the courage to do it alone. So therefore, we have to work together with other people, and that's when we're going to build a bigger industry. The second message is that we must all work together to create that enabling environment. And that enabling environment for me is about 3 simple things. It's about getting the government to help with the tax incentives that will make this market interesting. The government will never give you money. And if you wait and wait and wait for the government to bring a grant or to bring something, you will be hungry. What you must focus on is what the government has the ability to do, which is to create the right tax incentives, firstly for people who want to produce stuff here, but also the incentives for people who want to invest in the sector to do so. The second thing which we don't do very, very well is that we must produce the evidence and we must be able to tell the stories of success. Because without replicable evidence, capital will never, ever come. So if I sit many of you down, you can tell me about how many films you've made. Very few of you can actually tell me about how much money each of those films have made. And evidence is really, really fundamental. The third element is we must tell the stories. And you're uniquely positioned in that sense to ensure that the success stories, the wins, are all told. These are the things that help to build that concept, which we talk about as enabling environment. Item number 3 is we must invest in infrastructure. And infrastructure cannot be done by anybody alone. So I wish Kunle was still in the room, okay? But every crazy man trying to do it alone in Nigeria, or crazy woman, and I use the expression crazy, and please pardon me, you're crazy purely because you haven't seen the future, you haven't studied the replicable models, and you can only do it in partnership with other people. And I'll give you a good example. The best owners of infrastructure in any country in the world are the country's pension funds and family offices, people who have long-term capital and permanent capital. That's not what you do. So therefore, you've got to work with providers of capital to ensure that you can deliver on infrastructure with scale. And the infrastructure and the equipment that we must invest in is production infrastructure, post-production infrastructure, as well as distribution infrastructure, which is what Kene and Ope and everybody else are building. And without the long-term capital into those businesses, and I'm not talking ₦1 billion here, 2 billion naira there, it will help. But in the real money of capital, that's almost like petrol money. If you are going to do what is required to service an opportunity of 500 million people, it is going to require billions of dollars to do that. And in our own money, that is trillions of naira. So therefore, we're going to have to think, how do we create the businesses that can attract that much capital? We also need to focus on the talent, item number 4. And the talent needs to be trained and trained classically. 90% of people that work in production and post-production in this country are self-taught. And I know that as well because, I've also spent a bit of time around reality TV. And we need to train the talent properly, but we also need to ensure that we create the capacity to train an industry at scale, because there are lots of jobs that will be created here. We also need to focus on the talent management. And I keep looking for someone who wants to build Nigeria's biggest talent management company, because we'll be alongside them as a partner. And I still haven't found that group yet. Finally, we must focus on 2 elements. Getting all content digitalized and to the right standard is really, really fundamental. But storing that content and preserving that content. And there's also a lot of historical content that we have in places like NTA, like, the museum, the Ministry of Information in this country, that people need to think about how we can take that content and digitalize it and make it valuable. Finally, all of this only makes sense if it puts money in your pocket, if it can feed your generations, if it can create lots of jobs, if it can ensure that the investors that put money in get their money back with a multiple. And monetization is very, very key. And those of you at that end of the industry, there's a lot of good foundational work that you've done. But I think there's so much more that we can all do together. I look forward to working with you all over the next few years. And thank you all for what you do for Nigeria. God bless you.